Your father paid for this room 28 years ago, the woman behind the desk said before I had told her my name. I had spent most of the night driving across northern Arizona, trying to put distance between myself and the county morgue where I had identified Thomas Grant by the wedding band he had never stopped wearing. The highway was empty, a black ribbon laid across open desert, and the storm warning on the radio grew more urgent with every mile. At first, the dust looked like smoke gathering along the horizon. Then the wind struck my rental car hard enough to push me across the lane, and within seconds my headlights showed nothing but a wall of sand. I slowed to 15 miles per hour until a pale blue glow appeared through the storm. Vacancy, the sign said. Then 3 letters went dark, leaving only stay. The Marrow Creek Motor Lodge stood alone beside the highway, surrounding an empty parking lot. Its walls were the color of old bone, and every door was faded red. I parked beneath the office awning and ran inside. The lobby smelled of dust, burned coffee, and something faintly sweet. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 60s with iron gray hair pulled tightly behind her head. Her name tag read Lorna Vale. Beside her rested an old guest ledger with a cracked leather cover. I need a room until the storm passes, I said. Allison Grant, she replied. It was not a question. I searched the lobby for anything that might explain how she knew me. Did the police call ahead? Lorna closed the ledger. Your father paid for this room 28 years ago. My father died yesterday. I know. Blue neon flashed through the blinds. He asked us to keep the reservation. She placed a brass key on the counter. Its oval tag was stamped with the number 12. I was 8 years old 28 years ago. Yes, she said. You were. Outside, the wind screamed beneath the awning. Something struck the window, although there were no trees nearby. I told myself that Lorna had mistaken me for someone else with the same last name. I will pay for a different room. There are no different rooms tonight. I looked through the blinds. Several doors were dark, and the parking spaces in front of them were empty. Your sign says vacancy. Lorna glanced toward the blue light. It says many things. She pushed the key closer. I should have returned to the car, but I thought of my father dying alone, surrounded by labeled cassette tapes and unopened mail. Even in death, he had left me another silence to interpret. I took the key. Lorna opened the ledger and offered me a fountain pen. Signed beside your reservation. My name was already written beside a date from August 1998. The handwriting below it was small, uneven, and painfully familiar. Allison Grant. As a child, I had shaped the final letter like a crooked cross. I dropped the pen. Where did you get this? You brought it. I have never been here. For the first time, Lorna looked almost sorry. Room 12 is at the end of the east wing. Keep the curtains closed. If the telephone rings, do not tell the caller where you are. Who would call me here? Someone who already knows. The lights went out. In the darkness, I heard ledger pages turning by themselves. When the lights returned, Lorna was holding the brass key toward me again, even though I could feel the first key in my coat pocket. I stared at both of them. Which one is real? Whichever one opens the door. I took the second key and left without signing. Room 12 stood directly beneath the neon sign. Wind drove sand across the covered walkway. The key entered the lock without resistance. The room was decades out of date, with wood-paneled walls, a rust-colored bedspread, and a box television. The alarm clock read 2:17 a.m., although my phone showed 11:43 p.m. On the luggage rack sat a red suitcase with a white handle. I stopped breathing. My mother had bought me that suitcase before a family trip when I was 8. I remembered decorating it with 2 silver star stickers. Both were still there. Dust covered everything else, but the suitcase felt warm. Inside were children's clothes, a copy of Charlotte's Web, and a photograph of my parents standing beside the motel sign. Between them stood a little girl in yellow shorts. Me. The telephone rang. It was a beige push-button model on the nightstand, although no cord. Connected it to the wall. It rang again, and I answered. For several seconds, I heard static and a faint clicking sound, like a cassette turning. Then my father said, Allison, listen carefully. My knees weakened. Thomas always used my full name when something mattered. Never Allie. Dad, you have been in that room before. Do not sleep, and whatever they put under the door, do not sign it. A scraping sound came from the hallway. A white sheet of paper slid beneath the door. Where are you? I asked. His breathing changed. They know you came back. The line went dead. I picked up the paper. It was a checkout form from the Marrow Creek Motor Lodge. My adult name appeared at the top, but the signature at the bottom had been written by a child. Beneath it, in faded red ink, was a sentence that made the room seem to contract around me. Reserved guest will return in 2026. Beyond the door, someone dragged a suitcase along the walkway, stopped outside my room, and whispered my childhood nickname in my mother's voice. Then the deadbolt began to turn by itself. The deadbolt clicked open, and the door moved inward an inch even though I was standing 6 feet away. My mother's voice came from the other side, soft and patient, using the nickname she had not spoken since I was 8 years old. "Allie, open the door. I have been waiting." Every part of me wanted to believe her. That was what frightened me most. I backed toward the window, clutching the checkout form in one hand and the brass key in the other. The door opened another inch. A strip of darkness appeared beyond it, but I could not see the walkway or the blue neon light. I saw a yellowed wallpaper stretching into a narrow hallway that could not exist outside the room. "You left me here," the voice said. "Please do not leave me again." I looked at the photograph on the bed. Rachel Grant had been 33 when she disappeared, and the voice outside sounded exactly as I remembered her. But memory was a poor witness, and my father had warned me not to sign. I tore the checkout form in half. The pieces slipped from my fingers, floated upward, and joined together without leaving a seam. The doorknob began to turn. I climbed through the window. Sand struck my face as I dropped onto the ground-level walkway. The storm had weakened enough for me to see my rental car 20 yards away beneath the awning. I ran without looking back. Behind me, the door to room 12 opened, and my mother called my name with sudden urgency. I unlocked the car, threw myself inside, and started the engine. The dashboard clock read 2:17 a.m. My phone still showed 11:51 p.m. I drove out of the parking lot and turned west toward Flagstaff. The motel disappeared behind the dust. I watched the odometer as 1 mile passed, then 5, then 10. The storm thinned, but no other headlights, exits, or homes appeared. At 15 miles, a blue light appeared ahead. Vacancy flashed through the darkness. Then the first 3 letters died. Stay? The Marrow Creek Motor Lodge stood on the right side of the road, exactly as I had left it. My parking space was empty, and the door to room 12 remained open. I drove past without slowing. 5 minutes later, the sign appeared ahead again. I turned around and drove east. The same sign waited for me. I left the pavement and aimed toward a dark ridge, but within a minute my headlights swept across the motel office again. My car was parked in the same space beneath the awning, facing the highway as though it had never moved. The odometer had returned to its original reading. I called emergency services. A woman answered after one ring. "What is the location of your emergency?" "The Marrow Creek Motor Lodge, somewhere west of Winslow." "I cannot leave." There was a pause. "Ma'am, Marrow Creek closed in 1998. I looked through the windshield. The office light glowed behind the blinds. "I am looking at it. What is your name?" "Allison Grant." After another pause, she said, "There is no one on the line. Is anyone there?" The call ended. My contact list opened by itself. Names disappeared one after another, including coworkers, neighbors, and the funeral director I had spoken with that morning. My own contact card turned blank. I shut off the phone and stepped outside. The office door was locked. Lorna stood behind the counter with her back to me, perfectly still. I knocked on the glass. She did not move. The guest ledger lay open beneath the desk lamp, and its pages turned slowly in a room without wind. As I followed the walkway toward room 12, I noticed a man sitting in a plastic chair outside room 9. He looked about 30 and wore a sun-faded denim jacket from another decade. "You made it 15 miles, he said. "That is farther than most people get." "Who are you?" "Caleb Brooks." He nodded toward my car. "You tried the road. Did you try walking?" "How do you know how far I drove?" "The motel likes 15. Sometimes it allows 20 if it wants you to feel hopeful." His watch had stopped at 2:17. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "Since last night." "What date was last night?" "August 14th. "What year?" His faint smile disappeared. "You should not ask questions until you know which answers can hear you." The unplugged ice machine began to hum, and something dropped inside with a metallic clunk. Caleb stood. "Your room is changing. You need to see it before it decides what you remember." I opened room 12 with the brass key. The red suitcase was gone. The closet now held children's clothes in the size I had worn at 8. The television flickered on and showed my family eating dinner in this room. My mother was crying silently while my father packed the suitcase. 8-year-old Allison sat on the bed, staring directly into the camera, although no one had filmed us. From the bathroom came the sound of my mother singing the lullaby she used when storms frightened me. Steam spread across the mirror even though cold water ran from the faucet. 3 words appeared in the fog. You came back alone. I stumbled outside. Caleb had vanished. A newspaper lay on his chair. The front page was dated August 16, 1998. Beneath Caleb's photograph was a headline about a gas station clerk who had disappeared after helping a stranded family. I ran to the office window. Lorna was gone, but the ledger remained open. 3 names were written across the final page. Thomas Grant. Checked out. Rachel Grant. Still in house. Allison Grant. Return pending. As I read the last line, every door in the motel opened at once, and my mother's lullaby began, playing from every empty room. The lullaby stopped the moment I spoke my mother's name. Every open doorway went dark, and the silence that followed felt deliberate, as though the motel had been waiting to learn whether I still remembered her. I stood outside the office with one hand against the glass, staring at the words Rachel Grant. Still in house. My reflection trembled over the page. Behind it, something moved between the shelves, but when I turned, the office was empty. A metal door near the ice machine clicked open. Caleb leaned through the gap and whispered, "Do not stand where the rooms can see you." I followed him into a narrow service passage that smelled of cold concrete and old rain. He shut the door behind us, cutting off the blue neon glow. A bare bulb flickered overhead. "You knew that newspaper would say you disappeared," I said. "You knew what year it was." Caleb continued down the passage. "I knew it would show you something. You said you arrived last night." For me, I did. He stopped beside a dented utility cart. "Time does not move correctly here. It piles up. Some nights last hours. Some last years. The motel keeps only enough of the past to make you doubt the present." The passage ended at a locked gray door. Caleb worked a thin piece of metal into the latch. "I repaired cash registers at the gas station," he said. "Locks are simpler." The door opened into a windowless storage room packed from floor to ceiling. Hundreds of personal objects covered metal shelves. Wallets, purses, watches, keys, eyeglasses, wedding rings, children's shoes, family photographs, and license plates from nearly every state. Each item had a paper tag tied to it with string. Some tags were yellow with age. Others looked new. I opened a wallet. The driver's license belonged to a woman named Helen Burke. Her photograph felt familiar, but the name meant nothing to me. The tag read Room 6, May 1974. "Who are these people?" "Guests," Caleb said. "The ones who never left." He handed me a small red toy truck with a child's initials carved underneath. For 1 second, I remembered a boy in the back row of my 3rd grade classroom pushing that truck across his desk. The memory vanished before I could see his face. "That is what this place does," Caleb said. "The longer it keeps someone, the more the outside world forgets. Photographs change. Records disappear. Families remember an empty chair, but not who once sat there." I thought of Rachel. For years, every official document had described her as a mother who abandoned her family. My father refused to discuss her, and I had treated his silence as proof. "How do you know all this?" I asked. "Because I used to remember my brother's face." His voice dropped. "Now I remember only that I came looking for him." My mother's lullaby traveled through the air vent. Caleb pulled me behind a shelf as the gray door opened. Lorna entered carrying the guest ledger. She placed it on a table beneath the bulb. "You can come out, Allison." Caleb shook his head, but Lorna added, "Room 12 knows where she is." Hiding only makes it curious. I stepped forward. "Is my mother alive?" "Alive is not a useful word here." "Then use a useful one." Lorna opened the ledger to my family's page. "Your mother remains connected to the room. That is why it remembers you." "What does return pending mean?" "You were reserved as a child. Children cannot be held completely unless they choose to stay, so the room marked you for adulthood." She removed a checkout form from the ledger. For rules were typed across the top in faded ink. Accepting a key or entering an assigned room allows the motel to claim a guest. Sleeping in room 12 makes the claim permanent. A claimed guest cannot cross the property before sunrise without checking out. Checkout requires the name of a willing adult who will remain in place of those leaving. Beneath those rules, someone had added a fifth line by hand. A reserved child who returns as an adult is claimed upon entering the room. That is why the road brought me back before I slept, I said. Lorna nodded. Your reservation was already waiting. Caleb pointed to the bottom edge of the form. A faint sentence had been scratched away. What did that line say? Lorna folded the paper before I could read it. Nothing that helps you leave. How can anyone become a willing replacement without knowing what this place is? I asked. A person agrees by accepting a key, signing the ledger, or entering after a guest invites them. Lorna placed a fresh form before me. Caleb's name was already typed on the replacement line. He entered willingly in 1998. His name would satisfy your reservation. He has a life outside. The world has nearly forgotten him. Soon it will forget you. My stomach tightened. Why did my father get out? Lorna's expression changed. He paid. With whom? Before she could answer, a cassette recorder clicked on beneath the table. Dust covered it, but the reels began turning. My father's voice filled the room. Allison, if you hear this, Lorna has shown you the rules. Do not believe that they are complete. Lorna reached for the recorder, but Caleb blocked her. Thomas continued. The motel changes the truth whenever the truth threatens it. Your mother did not abandon us, and she did not lose her place by accident. She chose it. Static crackled, followed by his tired breathing. We were trapped in room 12 in August 1998. I tried to give it the name of a stranger. Rachel stopped me. She wrote her own name so that you and I could leave. The recorder clicked once, and his voice returned more quietly. Your mother did not leave us, Allison. She stayed behind to save you. My mother had not abandoned me. She had been trapped in the dark for 28 years while I learned to hate her for leaving. The cassette continued to turn, but my father's voice was gone. Only static remained, soft and steady, like rain falling in another room. I stared at Lorna across the table. You knew? She closed the guest ledger. Knowing is not the same as understanding. You let me believe. She walked away. I never told you what to believe. Caleb stepped between us. The room is listening. It grows stronger when people blame one another. The bare bulb dimmed. My mother's lullaby returned through the air vent. Each note stretched until the melody sounded almost unfamiliar. Shelves shifted apart, revealing a faded red door that had not been there before. My brass key grew warm, and Lorna looked genuinely afraid. Do not open that. Why? Because it will show you what you need, not necessarily what happened. Caleb glanced at the recorder. Your father said the motel changes the truth when it is threatened. That means it is afraid. I inserted the key. The door opened before I turned it. Warm air carried the smell of motel soap and the cherry cough syrup my mother had given me as a child. On the other side was room 12 exactly as it had appeared in 1998. A weather report played on the television, and my red suitcase sat open on the luggage rack. 8-year-old Allison slept against the headboard with a paperback on her chest. The sight broke something inside me. My mother stood near the window, younger than I remembered, wearing a green sweater despite the August heat. My father paced beside the door. Neither of them could see me. We cannot keep driving, Thomas said. Every road brings us back. Rachel held a checkout form in both hands. Then we wait for morning. Lorna said the room seals itself at sunrise. Lorna has lied since we entered the office. She said one name gets the other two out. My father sounded desperate. There is a man at the gas station. He helped us find this place. He would come if I called. My mother looked at him as though he had become someone she did not recognize. You want to invite a stranger here and leave him behind? I want our daughter to live. So do I. Then what choice do we have? Rachel looked toward the sleeping child on the bed. A choice that belongs to us. She picked up the fountain pen. Thomas caught her hand. No, she cannot stay here. Neither can you. I am her mother. And I am her father. Rachel touched his face. Then take her away and do not let this place find her again. Promise me she will remember that I loved her. The memory shuddered, and when the blue light cleared, Thomas was carrying my younger self toward the door. Rachel stood beside the bed, signing her own name on the checkout form. The wall stretched away from Thomas. The doorway moved farther with every step, but a young man appeared in the hall and reached across the threshold. It was Caleb, exactly as he looked now, only less tired. Move, he shouted. The road is open. My father stumbled outside with me in his arms. Caleb started to follow, but Rachel called from inside. He turned back. She is still in there. She chose to stay, Thomas said. That does not mean we leave her. Caleb ran into room 12 before the door finished closing. The room claimed him as he crossed the threshold, proving that Rachel's sacrifice had never limited it to one guest. The scene dissolved. I stood in the present room with Caleb beside me, his face drained of color. I remember, he whispered. I came back for her. You knew my family. I knew enough to know something was wrong. Your father carried you into the gas station before dawn and kept saying the motel had taken his wife. I thought he was confused. Then I heard Rachel calling from the road. I was not searching for a missing brother. The motel gave me that memory because it needed a reason I would accept. Lorna remained in the doorway. Memories decay here. The room fills the empty spaces. You gave him that story, I said. I gave him something he could survive believing. The bathroom mirror began to fog. A woman appeared as though she stood in another room behind the glass. Rachel had not aged. Her dark hair rested against the shoulders of her green sweater, and her eyes found mine immediately. Allison, she said. I stepped closer. Mom. Her smile was small and unbearably familiar. You came back. I did not know. I know. Let me take you out. Her expression changed. There is no checkout, sweetheart. Not the way they told us. Lorna moved closer. Do not listen to her. Rachel looked past me. Every replacement becomes another room. Every sacrifice gives this place a new door, a new road, and another voice to borrow. Caleb stared at Lorna. You said the rules kept it contained. They did, Lorna answered. For a time. No, Rachel said. They fed it. A deep vibration moved through the floor. The television switched on and showed an aerial view of the motel. Red doors extended into the desert, each one numbered 12. How do we stop it? I asked. Rachel pressed her palm to the inside of the mirror. Remember the people it erased. Return their names. That is the one thing. It cannot imitate. The mirror split down the center, and her image vanished. Outside, metal room numbers began falling from the doors. I ran onto the walkway. Every number had changed to 12. Beyond the parking lot, headlights appeared along the highway. Dozens of cars rolled toward us with their engines silent. Farther away, figures emerged from the dark town, walking through the desert in their sleep. Men, women, and children moved beneath the blue neon glow. Lorna closed her eyes. It has never called this many before. From every room, telephones began ringing at once. Every telephone in the motel rang with a different voice, and one of them was my own. The sound rolled across the courtyard while silent cars drifted off the highway. Behind the windshields, people sat with their eyes closed, hands resting in their laps as though they were passengers in a dream. Lorna pulled me into room 12. Caleb followed and shut the door before the first car reached the parking lot. The motel is inviting them, Lorna said. It will place a key in every open hand. Then stop it, I said. You work here. Her face tightened. I arrived in 1981 with my husband and our daughter, Evelyn. I wrote my husband's name on the form because the room promised our child could leave with me. The road opened, but Evelyn disappeared before we crossed the property line. By morning, my husband remembered that we had never had a daughter. Her voice thinned. The motel offered me the front desk and promised that I might remember her if I kept the rooms occupied. I accepted because forgetting her felt worse than staying. Caleb stared at her. How many people did you bring here? Too many. I told myself that replacements kept the hunger away from town. I did not understand that every name made it larger. Outside, car doors opened in perfect unison. Lorna took a checkout form from the ledger and pressed it against my chest. Caleb's name was already typed on the replacement line. Sign it. The road will open before sunrise. No, those people have families. If you refuse, the motel will claim them. If I sign, it will build another room. Lorna looked toward the window. On the walkway, brass keys were appearing in the stranger's open palms. Their fingers had not yet closed around them. You have only minutes, she said. The telephone beside the bed rang. I did not answer, but my father's voice came through the speaker. Allie, listen to Lorna. Write his name and come home. My hand froze above the form. The voice was almost perfect, but Thomas used my full name whenever he needed me to remember something important. You are not my father, I said. The voice paused. Allie, please. My father called me Allison. The room changed around us. The bed became the hospital cot where I had last seen Thomas alive. He sat beneath a white blanket, his eyes filled with disappointment. You waited too long, the imitation said. You let me die alone. The words found the guilt I had carried from the morgue, but the machine beside him displayed 217, and the room smelled of motel dust. I lowered the pen to the form. Instead of writing Caleb's name, I drew a line through the replacement field and wrote 4 words beneath it. No guest will remain. The paper shook in my hand. The imitation of my father vanished, and the floor beneath the bed gave a hollow knock. Caleb pushed the bed aside. One floorboard was newer than the rest. He pried it up with the brass key, revealing a bundle of ledger pages wrapped in oilcloth. Lorna stepped back. Those pages were destroyed. No, I said. They were hidden because the motel could not erase them. The first sheet held dozens of names written across different decades. Some had room numbers beside them. Others had only dates and the words still in house. I recognized Helen Burke from the driver's license in the storage room. Below her was Samuel Ortiz, then Margaret Bell, then a child named Daniel Price. Outside, the clerk's bell rang in the office. Once those people close their hands around the keys, they will have accepted, Lorna said. I stepped onto the walkway with the pages. The courtyard was filled with sleepwalking strangers. Each held a brass key on an open palm. The neon sign flashed stay above them. I read the first name aloud. Helen Burke. A door at the far end of the motel vanished, leaving a blank wall. One sleeping woman gasped and dropped her key. I read the next name. Samuel Ortiz. Another door disappeared. The ground shifted beneath us. Caleb took half the pages, and together we read name after name. Rooms folded inward. Red doors faded into solid walls. The strangers began waking before their fingers could close around the keys. Confused and frightened, they turned toward their cars as memories returned to them. Lorna seized one page and read 2 names herself. The office windows went dark, and her name tag fell to the pavement. From room 12, my mother called me. I ran inside. Rachel stood beyond the bathroom mirror, cracks crossing the glass between us. Keep reading, she said. We found the pages. Then the doors are closing. Come with me. I pressed my palm to the mirror. Hers met it from the other side. I cannot, she said. There has to be a way. I am the memory that held your door open. When the last name is returned, this room will have nothing left to hold. Then what happens to you? Her eyes softened. You remember me correctly. Behind me, the walls began stretching. The doorway moved farther away, repeating the trick it had used on my father. Rachel looked toward the hall. You must close the final door from the outside. I left you once. You were a child. This time, you are ending what kept me here. Caleb shouted that dawn was breaking. I gathered the remaining pages and moved toward the door, but the carpet lengthened beneath my feet. My mother began singing the old lullaby. With every line, the room released another foot of space. I reached the threshold and turned back. Rachel stood beside the bed in her green sweater, exactly as she had on the last night of my childhood. She smiled. Go, Allison. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut. The brass key turned in my hand without entering the lock. Every telephone stopped ringing. Then hundreds of voices whispered their names from behind the door, waiting for me to finish the list before sunlight reached the horizon. The first edge of sunlight touched the desert as I began reading the final page, and the motel answered by trying to erase every name before I could speak it. Ink faded beneath my eyes. Letters rearranged themselves into meaningless shapes. Voices whispered from behind room 12, each one pleading not to be forgotten again. Caleb held the page toward the rising light. Read what you remember, he said. The paper is not the only place the names exist. I pictured the storage room, Helen Burke's wallet, the red toy truck, the photographs, and the tags that had survived decades in the dark. I continued reading. Each spoken name removed another piece of the motel. Windows folded into blank walls. The walkway shortened beneath our feet, and the blue sign flickered between vacancy, stay, and nothing at all. The waking strangers dropped their keys before driving toward the highway. A woman whispered the name of a sister who had vanished in 1974. An elderly man repeated the name Samuel as though he had not spoken it in 50 years. The motel trembled, but instead of breaking wood or glass, I heard ordinary sounds returning to the world. Birthday songs, school bells, dinner plates, and parents calling children home before dark. Lorna read another name from her page. Evelyn Vale. The office vanished behind her. For one moment, a little girl stood where the front desk had been, wearing a yellow dress and holding a paper cup of lemonade. Lorna reached toward her. "I am sorry," she whispered. Evelyn smiled before fading into the morning light. When Lorna opened her eyes, she looked less like a clerk and more like a mother who remembered why she stayed. "I spent 45 years feeding the thing that took her," she said. "You spent 45 years being lied to," I said. She guided the remaining strangers back to their cars. Caleb and I reached the last two names. Rachel Grant, Caleb Brooks. Beneath them, a third line remained blank. "Read mine first," he said. "What will happen? Someone will remember that I existed. That is not the same as getting your life back. No, but it is more than this place allowed me to hope for." I spoke his full name. The remaining walls disappeared, leaving only room 12 in the middle of an empty lot. Caleb became transparent around the edges. The brightening desert showed through his jacket. He smiled. "Do not be afraid. I have been missing since 1998. Maybe now I can finally arrive somewhere." He placed the brass key in my palm. "You will need this to close the last door. You helped my family. I wish I remembered more. You remembered enough." His voice grew distant. "Tell them I tried to come home." Morning light passed through him, and Caleb was gone. Somewhere far away, a telephone rang once and was answered. I faced room 12. My mother's name remained dark and clear on the page, with the empty line waiting beneath it. Lorna stood at the edge of the lot. "When you read Rachel's name, the room will lose its final anchor," she said. "What is the blank line for?" "Not a guest. A witness. Someone must carry the names after the ledger is gone." "What happens to the witness?" "The motel never allowed me to find out." "Will Rachel be free?" "This place never taught freedom. It only taught exchange." I held the page with both hands and spoke my mother's full name. The door opened. Rachel stood inside in her green sweater, surrounded by warm afternoon light that did not belong to the Arizona dawn. I smelled her perfume and remembered her hand smoothing my hair after a nightmare. "I remember you," I said. "I remember that you stayed. I remember that you loved me. I remember that you did not leave." Relief softened her face. "Then I can go." "Where?" "Somewhere this room cannot follow." The walls behind her faded into sunlight. Before the doorway disappeared, she lifted one hand in farewell. I wanted to follow, but that would have turned love into another sacrifice. I stayed and watched the room become a rectangle of blue light, then a shadow, then bare desert. I placed the brass key where the threshold had been. It sank into the sand and vanished. The neon sign went dark. The parking lot dissolved around me. When I turned, Lorna was gone. My rental car stood alone beside the highway. I drove east until the dashboard clock changed from 2:17 to 2:18. At the county line, my phone began restoring names. Messages appeared from coworkers who remembered me. A missed call came from an unknown number in Oklahoma. The voicemail contained only a man crying with relief as he repeated Caleb's name. 3 days later, official records changed. Rachel Grant was no longer listed as a woman who had abandoned her family. An archived report said she disappeared during a motel fire in August 1998 after helping her husband and daughter escape. It also named Caleb Brooks as the gas station clerk who entered to help and never returned. My father's attorney sent me one final package. Inside was a cassette labeled Allison, After the Room is Gone. Thomas sounded older than he had on the previous recordings. "I am sorry I let silence become a lie," he said. "Whenever I remembered your mother clearly, the motel found you. I spent years forcing myself to forget her so that you could have a life. That was my cowardice and my gift. I hope you can understand both." I placed the cassette beside the photograph of my parents. For several weeks, nothing unusual happened. Then I traveled to Chicago for work and checked into an ordinary airport hotel. At 2:17 a.m., blue light appeared beneath my door. The brass key rested on the nightstand even though I had left it beneath the Arizona sand. The hotel door had turned faded red, and a crooked number 12 hung above the peephole. The telephone rang. A frightened woman whispered, "Is this the front desk?" Every hallway brings me back to my room. I looked toward the mirror. My reflection wore a name tag that read Allison Grant. Words appeared across the telephone display. "Stay transferred successfully. Checkout unavailable." Beyond the red door, my mother's voice whispered the warning I finally understood. "Do not give it another name."